I used to sleep through the night, until the house began whispering to me at 3 a.m. Raymond Ellis is 77 years old. He lives alone in a small wooden house tucked between the tall pines of Oregon, the same house he built with his own hands back in 1976. It used to echo with his wife's laughter every morning. For most of his life, Raymond woke up at 6 a.m. sharp, brewed his coffee, and stepped outside to feel the cold air on his skin. But lately, something has shifted. Not pain, not nightmares, just this one thing. At exactly 3 a.m. each night, his eyes open, wide awake. No noise, no reason, just silence and a strange knowing that he won't fall back asleep. At first, it was irritating, then unsettling. Was something wrong with his body? Or was this just part of getting old? If you've ever found yourself staring at the ceiling at 3 a.m., wondering why it keeps happening, this video is for you. Not to scare you, but to bring understanding. Not to fix you, but to help you listen more gently. Because sometimes the body doesn't scream, it whispers. And those whispers often come in the quietest hours. In this video, we'll explore 6 overlooked yet common reasons why many older adults wake up around 3 a.m. each. One is a quiet message from your body. And by the end, you'll not only know what's happening, but also what you can do to feel more at peace in your own rhythm. So what exactly is waking Raymond up at 3 a.m., and could the same be true for you? Let's begin where sleep becomes the most fragile. It's not that you have insomnia. It's that your body is running out of the fuel for sleep. Raymond first noticed it on a Wednesday. He woke up at 3:11 a.m. The room was quiet, the air was still. His eyes were open, and yet he didn't feel tired, not groggy, not restless, just awake. Fully, silently, inexplicably awake. He stayed in bed, waiting for sleep to return like it used to, but it never did. The next night, the same thing happened. And the next. It was like his body had decided that sleep no longer needed to last until morning. What Raymond didn't know then was that something very real inside him had shifted. After age 65, the body produces about 60% less melatonin than it once did. Melatonin is the gentle hormone that tells the body when it's time to rest, the quiet voice that nudges your brain towards sleep. When you were younger, it was abundant, steady, reliable. Now, as it fades, sleep becomes lighter, more fragile, more easily broken in the early morning hours. And when that drop in melatonin comes around 3 a.m., you wake up not because something startled you, but because the very thing that holds you in sleep has slowly slipped away. Raymond, like many others, thought he could solve it with supplements. He bought a bottle of melatonin gummies from the pharmacy and took them before bed. At first, it helped, but soon he needed more to get the same effect, and then it stopped working. The truth is, using melatonin the wrong way can backfire. When taken too often or at the wrong time, it can confuse your natural rhythms and make it even harder for your body to find its own way back to sleep. Your body is not broken. It is adjusting. It is asking for a little support, not a shortcut. That's when Raymond began doing something different. Instead of taking more, he started doing less. Less screen time after dinner. Less bright lights in the evening. He swapped TV for a warm lamp and put his phone away after 8 p.m. Most importantly, he began taking short walks around 5:30 p.m., letting the evening sun touch his skin and signal to his brain that night was approaching. It was a small change, but it worked. According to a 2021 study by the NIH, older adults who got at least 20 minutes of natural light in the late afternoon improved their sleep quality by up to 38%. Raymond didn't read that study. He just felt it. Felt the difference in the way he eased into sleep and stayed there longer. Felt that his body, once confused, was slowly finding its rhythm again. But melatonin is only one piece of the story. For many older adults, the real reason for those 3 a.m. wake-ups lies not just in chemistry, but in the slow shifting of time itself. Let's take a closer look at what happens when the body's inner clock starts ticking ahead. You don't have insomnia. You're just living a few hours earlier than everyone else. Raymond used to fall asleep around 10 p.m. That was his rhythm for years. He'd tidy the kitchen, lock the back door, maybe read a few pages of a woodworking magazine before nodding off. But over the past few months, something changed. It wasn't dramatic. In fact, it happened so gradually he didn't even notice. One night he nodded off in his recliner at 8:30, then 8:15. Eventually, he found himself brushing his teeth at 7:45, yawning as if the day had run its course. What Raymond didn't realize is that his body had quietly adjusted its clock. Not broken, just shifted. This change is known as advanced sleep phase. As we age, our internal clock often begins to tick a little earlier. The rhythm that once had you asleep from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. may now run from 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. It's the same amount of rest, just rescheduled. And when 4 a.m. arrives in a world still dark and silent, it can feel like something is wrong. But really, your body might just be telling you, you've already had your night. That's the quiet truth many people overlook. It's not that the sleep is missing, it's that it's moved. The mistake many people make, including Raymond at first, is trying to fight this shift. He would force himself to stay up later, thinking it would fix the early wake-ups, but that only made things worse. His body felt groggy, his mind restless. The more he fought the change, the more unsettled his nights became. The breakthrough came not from resisting, but from gently adjusting. Raymond began creating small rituals in the evening. After dinner, he would call his daughter just to hear her voice. He added a 10-minute walk after sunset, letting the cool air and quiet streets help wind down his day. Some nights he'd sit in his favorite chair and read until 9 with only a warm lamp and a soft blanket. No screens, no pressure, just small signs to his body that bedtime didn't have to come so soon. Over time, those cues helped stretch his sleep window just enough. He didn't need to stay up until midnight, just a little later, just enough to feel aligned again. That's the beauty of understanding your own rhythm. Once you stop blaming yourself, you can start working with your body, not against it. But sometimes, even when the timing feels right, something else still pulls you from sleep. And in many cases, it's not the mind or the clock, but the body itself quietly asking for attention. Let's explore what happens when physical discomfort starts speaking in the middle of the night. You didn't wake up because of a sound. You woke up because your knee whispered after lying still too long. Raymond never heard anything when he woke at 3 a.m. No creaking floorboards, no barking dogs, no wind rattling the window. Just his own body, still and quiet, tugging him gently out of sleep. At first he thought it was habit, but then he began to notice a pattern. On the nights he ate dinner later than usual or drank a tall glass of water too close to bedtime, the early wake-ups were worse. Sometimes it was a dull ache in his lower back. Other times it was the burning tightness of reflux rising slowly in his chest. And more than once, it was the sharp cramp twisting through his left calf, forcing him to stretch in the dark. His body, once steady and predictable, had started whispering in discomfort. These physical reasons often go unnoticed. A full bladder that doesn't feel urgent until everything else is still. A dry mouth that makes you swallow more than usual. A knee joint stiffened by hours of stillness. They seem small in the daylight, but at 3 a.m. they are enough to break sleep's fragile hold. For Raymond, the most surprising part was realizing how much of it he could change. Not with medicine, but with awareness. He started eating dinner before 6 p.m., giving his body time to digest fully. He moved his larger glass of water to the early afternoon and sipped only lightly after 7. On nights when his legs felt restless, he added an extra pillow under his knees to relieve pressure on his lower back. And when he noticed that a certain blood pressure pill made him get up more often, he spoke to his doctor and adjusted the timing. The mistake he had made for months was assuming this was just how aging worked. That waking early was inevitable. But once he began listening closely, he realized these wake-ups were not random. They were signals. gentle reminders that his body was still working, still reacting, still needing care. Sleep, he learned, wasn't just about the brain. It was about comfort, timing, and balance throughout the body. Yet even when the body is at ease and the hours are aligned, there's something else that can stir us from our rest. Something deeper. Something quieter. Let's look at what happens when the rhythms of life grow quieter and our hearts start to speak instead. It's not that the night is too long. It's that your day has quietly grown shorter. Raymond used to laugh at the idea of going to bed before the sun went down. But one evening, as he sat in his favorite chair and reached for the remote, he let out a long yawn. He looked at the clock. It was 7:12 p.m. He hadn't done much that day. A light breakfast, a short nap after lunch, a slow afternoon of watching the news and folding laundry. Dinner was at 5. By the time evening arrived, his body was already settling in for the night. And sure enough, he was fast asleep by 8. That night, he woke again at 3 a.m., alert and confused. But the math made sense. His body had simply finished its full cycle of rest. It was morning, in its own quiet way. What Raymond experienced is something many older adults go through without realizing. As the pace of life slows, the structure of the day fades. Less movement, less daylight, less engagement, meals shift earlier, naps get longer. Without meaning to, the day gets shorter. And when the body begins its wind down at 5 or 6 in the evening, sleep starts earlier too. Which means waking up at 3 a.m. isn't a disruption. It's just your new morning. The good news is that this rhythm can be gently reshaped. Raymond began making a few small changes. He limited his daytime nap to no more than 30 minutes, just enough to refresh without resetting his clock. After 4 p.m., instead of sinking into the couch, he'd take a short walk down his street or tend to the small tomato plants behind his shed. In the evenings, he avoided watching TV in bed. Instead, he kept his bedroom a screen-free space, reading a few pages from an old paperback or sitting quietly in meditation before turning off the light. These simple habits began to stretch his day back out. He didn't try to stay up until midnight, just enough to feel like his night belonged to him again. Still, even when the schedule feels right and the body feels calm, there are some wake-ups that go deeper. Because sometimes, the reason we wake has nothing to do with pain or patterns, but with memories that arrive uninvited in the dark. Let's take a closer look at the emotional side of 3 a.m. and the quiet truths it can reveal. Sometimes 3 a.m. is the only hour when memories find a quiet place to speak. There are nights when Raymond doesn't wake because of a sound or a cramp or the usual tug of habit. He wakes because something softer rises within him. A memory, a face, a silence too heavy to sleep through. He doesn't feel pain exactly, just absence. The kind that seeps in slowly like morning fog across the field. He turns on his side and reaches across the bed, still half expecting to feel her hand. But it's only a pillow. His wife passed away 6 years ago, but some nights, like this one, she feels closer than ever. Not in a loud or haunting way, just quietly present. A gentle ache that says, "Remember me." Science tells us that the brain is less distracted at night. With fewer tasks, no appointments, and no conversations to fill the space, the mind begins to wander inward. Emotions that stayed tucked away all day long begin to surface. Not because something is wrong, but because there is finally room for them to be felt. And for older adults like Raymond, who spend much of the day in stillness or solitude, the night becomes the only time the heart gets to speak. The mistake many people make is trying to silence these moments. They flip on the TV, scroll through their phone, or bury their feelings under blankets of distraction. But Raymond tried something different. He started keeping a journal beside his bed. Nothing fancy, just a pen and a few honest thoughts. Sometimes it's a line about missing her voice. Other times it's a memory of a road trip or a pie she used to bake every Thanksgiving. He also made a new habit of calling his niece in the evenings, just to talk for a few minutes about simple things like the weather or her garden. That connection helped soften the nights. He even considered adopting a senior dog from the shelter, something living, something warm, something that doesn't speak but listens in its own way. Loneliness doesn't always arrive with tears. Sometimes it just feels like waking up too early and not knowing what to do with the silence. But when we give those feelings a voice, when we make space for them instead of pushing them away, they often become lighter, more manageable, even healing. Still, while emotions and memories can stir us in the night, there are also quiet forces around us, in the very room we sleep in, that often go unnoticed. Let's look at how small environmental details can shape the way we rest, and what we can do to reclaim the stillness of the night. Sometimes the reason you wake up is just that tiny little clock light blinking in the dark. It took Raymond a while to figure it out. At first, he thought it was just another restless night. But night after night, something kept nudging him awake around the same time. He started noticing the details. A thin strip of light slipping through the edge of the curtain, the steady hum of the old air conditioner kicking on, the soft but persistent blink of the digital clock on his nightstand. One night he sat up at 6 a.m. and realized the room wasn't quiet at all. It was filled with whispers he had learned to ignore, the kind of subtle distractions that don't seem like much until your sleep becomes lighter with age. As we grow older, our brains become more sensitive to environmental cues. Things that once faded into the background now feel sharper. That bright LED on the TV that never really turns off. The rough edge of a fitted sheet that no longer fits just right. A blanket that's a little too thick in spring. A curtain that lets in the amber glow of a streetlight. These little things, each harmless on their own, can slowly chip away at restful sleep when combined. Raymond started making quiet adjustments. He replaced his old curtains with blackout panels that completely blocked the light. He put a small sticker over the clock's LED, not to erase the time, but to soften its glare. He swapped his stiff mattress topper for one that gave a little more under pressure. And instead of letting the air conditioner roar in bursts, he added a white noise fan that ran steadily through the night, helping him drown out the unpredictable. These weren't expensive changes, just thoughtful ones, and they worked, not perfectly, but enough. Sometimes the most powerful solutions come from noticing what others overlook. It's not always about medicine or major routines. Sometimes it's about making your sleep space feel like a sanctuary again. One where the night wraps around you gently, not with sharp edges and blinking lights. Of course, even after all this, there's one last truth worth remembering. Waking up at 3 a.m. isn't always a problem to solve. Sometimes, it's a moment of reflection, a chance to listen more closely to the wisdom your body carries with it after so many years. Let's close with that thought, and a reminder that the way we wake can say just as much as the way we rest. Waking up in the middle of the night can be a gift if you know how to listen to it. There was a time when Raymond feared 3 a.m. He thought it meant something was wrong, that his body was failing, that sleep had abandoned him. But now he sees it differently. He knows those quiet hours hold messages worth hearing. Maybe it's the body whispering that melatonin is running low. Maybe it's the internal clock, ticking just a little earlier with age. Perhaps it's a sore joint or a full bladder calling for care. Or maybe it's simply the weight of a memory, the ache of missing someone, or the hum of a streetlight breaking through a thin curtain. Whatever the reason, it's not a punishment. It's a signal, a moment to pause, to breathe, to be. These days, Raymond doesn't fight it. If he wakes at 3, he might write a letter to his granddaughter, the one who loves cherry pie and still draws him pictures in crayon. Some nights he simply sits by the window, watching the stars blink quietly behind the trees. The house no longer feels like it's waking him. It feels like it's keeping him company. So if you too have found yourself awake when the world is still, know that you're not alone. Maybe your body is speaking. Maybe your heart is remembering. Or maybe, like Raymond, you've simply finished your rest for the night and stepped into a softer kind of morning. Let that moment be gentle. Let it be enough. If you saw yourself in any part of this story or thought of someone you love who wakes in the dark unsure why, please consider sharing this video with them. You never know how much comfort a quiet understanding can bring. One simple gesture today might be the light someone else has been waiting for in the middle of their longest night.